And Brian, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Colin. I think I'm like everybody else. We're trying to find ways to, continue to be creative. And I got a bit of your conversation with your daughter. I think that's awesome. I have a sophomore college daughter too, and we used to plan ski trips because the only time I got a chance to talk to her was on the ski lift because she couldn't get to her phone. So it's kind of nice to have her around, and I get a chance to spend a little bit more time with the family in this respect. So, yeah, it's tough out there, right? A lot of people have lost their lives, and it's a difficult time. But from a family perspective, as a coach, you make up for a lot of lost time.
You know, Brian, it is, there's governments can't protect everybody, and we have to get into some difficult decisions about pivoting to business and life, and it'll trickle back. Are those, when you're in a meeting, when you're talking to university people, are those uncomfortable meetings talking about it? Are they open? Where do you stand this morning on where are we with this whole thing about college football plan this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of it is really centered around not just the game itself. It's about how do you bring students back. So the NFL is a lot easier because you could conceivably, bring back the professional ranks and, cut a deal with the players. Maybe there's some lost revenue there on the players' end that they have to agree to, and they could play without fans, and people would buy that product, certainly, and they'd watch it on TV. It's harder to do it at the collegiate level without students because one can't really exist without the other. So this is really a comprehensive plan now where it has to be in lockstep. So many football programs have existed as their own model, and those that have existed as their own business model are struggling right now. Those that have been intertwined with the university are going to get through this a lot quicker. And so it's really been more conversations about how do we interact in getting the students and the athletes back together in a integrated phase so we can get the season going.
I've said this before, is that it is harder to win at Notre Dame for the lessons I said. It's not sunny every day. It's academically can be very difficult. I could not get into Notre Dame. It's
you and me both.
When you go to recruit against Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, fine universities, but not Notre Dame. What is your sales pitch to a kid that knows school's going to be a lot easier at some of the other places?
Well, we can't even go down that path where somebody is interested in just, obviously they understand college and they understand that they've got to be in school and that a degree is important. But if it's not part of their decision making, in other words, that they understand the value of an education and what a Notre Dame degree will do for them 40 years down the road,
right,
then we're probably not even getting in that battle because we're not going to win it. So we have to be able to go from Washington State to Washington, D.C. to find those young men that understand that it's a 4 for 40, 4 years and 40 years. In other words, that this degree is going to give you an opportunity to open doors for 40 years. And then also have a chance to be in the playoffs and have a run at a championship and play an incredible schedule in venues all over the country from Ireland to L.A. to New York City to Las Vegas. And so, that's really the push here on our end.
Brian Kelly, 11th season Notre Dame coach, consecutive seasons of 11-plus wins, first time since the 80s. In fact, the 88 national title season. So you'll play Clemson this year. You probably already dug into the Trevor Lawrence video.
Yeah.
You've seen, I'm sure you've seen Joe Burrow stuff and Tua tape. You play all these teams, you know them. So if you were in the NFL today and you were looking at Joe Burrow as a general manager, give me a thumbnail sketch of what you think he will be in the NFL.
Well, I think the thing that stands out that was an incredible, consistent piece to his performance was he threw strikes. His accuracy level was as good as I've ever seen in a, very short career. Obviously we'd like to have seen it for 2 or 3 years, but for a year, and what he did in one season relative to his accuracy in throwing the football was just off the charts. And I think the other thing that stood out was his makeup, a toughness to him, almost in a linebacker sense. And you love to see that about a quarterback. So the accuracy and the toughness that he displayed, those two traits are hard to turn down.
Now, by the way, I think we tend to live in the moment, and Trevor Lawrence's last football game was not great. I saw him play in high school. I saw him live at a camp in San Diego, and I had told somebody I was sitting next to, I said, that's as good an arm as I've seen. That's as good a high school quarterback I've ever stood next to in my life. So I'm sure you've already looked through those tapes. Compare Burrow to Trevor Lawrence when you look at him.
Well, they're different quarterbacks in the sense that Trevor is a guy that can make the throws, anywhere on the field, but he's going to be in an offense that's going to feature his ability to run as well. He's not that Joe can't run. Don't get me wrong, he can, and he's got toughness, as I mentioned. But Trevor's a guy that you're going to move out of the pocket. He can make throws. He can run the football. But I just, we played him obviously in the playoffs, and his ability to see the field and vision, he's a complete quarterback.
Yeah.
And he played against us as a freshman and just tore us apart. So as a true freshman, when you're able to do that at the highest level, and we had a pretty good secondary, he impressed me as somebody that is only going to continue to get better.
Brian, when you recruit a high school player, let's say he's terrific, but he's got 2 injuries. Are you, and I'm talking about Tua here, have you ever passed on a recruit because you're like, you know what, it's more than an ankle sprain, it's 3 ankle sprains, or it's a shoulder? How worried, if you were drafting Tua, would you be? How worried about high school recruits who have been injured are you generally?
Well, the ankles are not too worried because the tightrope procedure really is one where, those are sprains that Alabama has a version of their treatment that requires them to follow a certain protocol that's different than most. So those two, I'm not really concerned. It's the hip, obviously, that's a little bit more concerning, but it seems as though he's come back beautifully. I would have just required to see a personal workout, and I think he's shown enough in those workouts that would, take away any of the concerns that people have about him. And, once you were able to see him move around and show no real effects of that, he's a young kid that is obviously going to get stronger physically. I would not pass on somebody of his talent because of the injury.
Thank you. That's what I get. They got 14 draft picks. I take another quarterback in the 6th round. I think he's too good to pass on. This will sound like a corny question, but Notre Dame football is different. I've only been there once. It's different. It feels different. The fans are on top of you. There's no NFL. Lambeau, maybe. There's nothing in the NFL like it. There's about 3 other places in college football that are even close to it. When you come out of the tunnel, even today for a big game, that Clemson game or the Michigan games, and again, this is a little corny maybe, but Brian, do you still come out of that tunnel and think, I coached at Central Michigan. I was just, honestly, is it still special to you?
It is. It starts when you walk down that tunnel and you touch the sign, and the tradition that you feel, the history of all the great coaches and great players that have played there. But I think it's more than that. I think it starts when you walk to the stadium and there's hundreds of thousands of people for every game, lined up, to welcome you. So it's just I don't know. It's a fairy tale. Every day that you go to game day at Notre Dame and you run out of that tunnel, you have to pinch yourself, saying it's unreal. I'll give you really one quick, because I know you've got other guests.
No. You take your time.
It was I think it was 2000 and I want to say it was 2014, and we had lost to Pittsburgh on the road, and we were in a tough stretch. We had, lost a number of players on defense. And it was November, and it was the next to last game of the year. It must have been below zero. And we're standing in the tunnel. And this is when I looked up and recognized how special it was. The entire stadium was packed. And we're playing BYU. And I said, I wouldn't even come out to see me today, especially after losing last week to Pittsburgh. But that's the kind of following, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip for so many people to come. They don't get the best tickets sometimes, so they're going to get the BYU ticket. They're going to get the ticket, no disrespect to BYU, but sometimes they don't get the USC ticket, and they're going to come to the games. And when I looked up and saw the stands full, I said, this is just different, and that story always sticks with me.
By the way, I had lunch with one of your players. He's a very, very smart young man from Georgia, Mick Assaf.
Mick he's something else.
He is sharp.
He's one of our sharp. He's the leader of our walk-ons, and we put him on scholarship this year. He leads up one of our leadership committees. He's a special kid for us.
Well, I had lunch with him. He spoke very highly of you. And, he thinks the world of you and your intensity and how you elevate players. I think the world of you. I cannot wait. I am crossing my fingers on a college football season, Brian, because let me just ask you this. Fundamentally, structurally, if you had to play January, February, March, would it be a big pain in the butt, or could you kind of slide it down a little bit and make it work?
I think we could make it work as long as it wasn't. I think we have to get through this. We can't have an overlapping semester, because then there's eligibility questions.
Okay.
That I don't know that we can really handle on the phone right now. So as long as there's not an overlapping semester situation, we can get through the semesters and everybody can tie up fall from winter and spring from summer. I think we can do that. So I think there's enough models out there that we can get this season in. There may be some situations where, we heard the other day that the mayor may not let anything happen in the city of L.A.
Yeah.
There may be some teams that have to play road games. And if that's the case, to play and get your season in at different sites, there may have to be those kinds of alterations to get a season in. We'll see what happens. Listen, it's too far away for me to even venture guesses right now, but I know everybody's trying to look at reasons to play.
Yeah, no, and that's I'm apprehensive about asking, because it's it's 8 months away. I don't have any idea. I joked last week. I said my local weatherman can't get the weather right 48 hours in advance. I'm not going to try to predict what happens in the fall. But you do sound at least like you could make it work, and I love the sport so much. I hope it does work. Brian, thank you so much.
Colin, thanks for having me on. Good talking to you, and stay safe and cherish those opportunities to talk to your daughter, because I certainly do as well.
Good stuff. Brian Kelly, Notre Dame. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.